Okay, time now 6 p.m. Actually, 6 minutes past 6 p.m. on the Friday, July 12th, 2024 in Japan Standard Time. Welcome to another edition of the World Bank Tokyo online seminar. My name is Koichi Omori. I am a senior external affairs officer of the World Bank based in Tokyo. We are organizing these online seminars to introduce the latest World Bank Group report presented by the authors of the report. We are going to feature this evening the new report titled Advancing Cloud and Data Infrastructure Market, Strategic Directions for Low and Middle Income Countries. This was released on May 23 this year. We have two presenters joining us today. Both of them are the co-lead authors of this new report. We have Carlo Maria Rosot, who is the Principal Investment Officer of the International Finance Corporation, IFC, of the World Bank Group, based in Paris, actually, joining us this evening. Carlo, good evening to you. And also, we are going to we have the Natalia Gervanovska Garcia, who is a senior ICT policy expert of the World Bank, based in Washington, D.C., actually, joining us momentarily. The next probably 30-40 minutes, we are going to listen to both Carlo and Natalia presenting this very interesting report, Advancing Cloud and Data Infrastructure Market. And following their presentation, I'll read the question that we received from the viewers. And if you did not have opportunities to submit and share your question in advance, please do so by sending your questions by email to me directly, or you can put it on the chat section of the YouTube screen so that I read your question on your behalf. Certainly, you can send your question by using online form posted on the announcement page of the seminar. So with the introduction, and I see now Natalia join the session. Natalia, welcome. I know it's 5 a.m. in Washington. Thanks for joining us early in the morning. So I'll pass the microphone to Natalia and Carlo for your keynote presentation on this very interesting report. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Natalia, would you like to start? And then I continue, if it's okay with you.
Yes, no problem. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Koichi. And we are very pleased with Carlo to be here and to present this report to you. Apologies for the slight delay. So it took some time for us actually to produce this publication, and we are now rolling out the dissemination throughout the bank and throughout our client country. We are very pleased to do so. In some of our bank branches as well. So a report is dedicated to advancing cloud and data infrastructure markets, not just the data centers or the, just adoption of cloud. This publication looks broader on development of actually markets for this data and cloud infrastructure. Let me go to it more. Carlo, who is switching the slides? Yes.
I'm in control of the slides now.
Excellent, excellent. So we are making the presentation, myself and Carlo, actually looking at our common history with Carlo. It's already the second book that we are launching together, a bigger one. The first was on broadband in Middle East and North Africa, where we were looking on broadband infrastructure. It was a publication 10 years ago. I think that with this publication, coming a deeper understanding, that the broadband is very important, but the digital infrastructure is becoming more complex and more layered, and we have to look into the more to support the digital transformation. We have a third co-author here, Vaiva Lazauskaitė. She is not part of the bank, but she is also one of the co-authors to this publication. It's a joint publication between the World Bank and IFC. It's a rare collaboration, and very few joint reports are between the institutions of the bank, and therefore we value it very much because it shows all the sides for the market development, the government, the private sector, so that's also very significant. Next slide, thank you. When we are, when the World Bank launched its World Development Report in 2021, that was dedicated to data for better lives, one of the major findings of that report was that despite the fact that it was established really well there that the data are essential for the economic development, it was established that the infrastructure for processing and analysis of data is not there. Especially it is not there in low and middle income countries. The report has showed also very clearly that the value, economic value of data can only be extracted if you analyze and if you process and if you share this data. If you don't do that, the economic value cannot be extracted. In our report, we are showing that data is an asset, is something that is growing as fast as nothing was growing before in the human history. And the nature of data is also changing. Most of the data we are producing through our multiple devices, people and machines, right? Because everything is generating data. These data are unstructured. What does it mean? It means that it's not Excel tables. We are producing audio, we are producing video, we are producing photos, and all of that is very difficult to analyze. So even though we capture all this data somehow, we only analyze less than 1% of all the data as a society. So to realize the potential of this enormously economically valuable asset, we need to have a technologically advanced infrastructure, right? So that we can extract these benefits. And Carlo, maybe we can move to the next slide now. And our analysis in this publication is looking into whether we are having it or not and what this infrastructure is. So cloud technology is a technical mean to process and utilize data, right? So without that, you cannot do that in these vast quantities. And data centers is a form. Data centers form the backbone of cloud and data infrastructure and enable storage, processing, and sharing of this data, right? So what we have also stating in this publication is that expansion of cloud and data infrastructure markets remain uneven. And this unevenness is adversely affecting low and middle income countries. Also, it was stated before, but the World Development Report that less than 20% of low and middle income countries have modern data infrastructure. It makes it difficult to create economic and social value from data. Here is one number for you. There is 0 low-income countries that have cloud on ramps. Cloud on ramps means that the country can directly connect to cloud infrastructure. So they have to go through the public internet, which is not a dedicated connection. It's not efficient, and you cannot really do much through this connection. While all high-income countries can do it, and most of middle-income countries can do it. So as of today, we can very clearly state that low and middle-income countries don't have a technical means to adequately digitally transform. Next slide, please. So how do we drive a positive change in low and middle income countries? And with that, I am passing the word to Carlo to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And indeed, I also on my side, I want to highlight the very close collaboration between the World Bank and the IFC, which means that this study took us 3 years to complete it. And we had 4 background papers looking at the market and the private sector, looking at legal and regulatory matters, looking at government cloud, and looking at the economics of cloud. And this report summarizes the different perspectives. Also, we were able to have an advisory committee made of private sector firms, including one Asian association of cloud providers that we consulted on each of the 4 reports and on the final product. So we can say that the cloud and data infrastructure markets are mainly private sector markets globally. 96% of the investment in cloud and data infrastructure is done by the private sector. And the private sector is pervasive in Japan, in Europe, in the United States, in countries like Brazil and India, for example. So we're basically active developing cloud markets, see a lot of private sector investment. And you can see it even by the power of some players. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I was impressed by AWS that reached an agreement with a nuclear facility in the United States, Avalon, because artificial intelligence requires more and more data processing capacity, and they secured a long-term contract with such a firm. So that tells you the level of influence of the private sector. When the private sector invests in this area, they look at large markets, at high-income markets, and the market size and the development of public cloud is the driver for investment. We see that in emerging markets, cloud markets grow gradually as large companies start putting their servers on the cloud, and then they accelerate when public cloud becomes available. The drivers of public cloud are multi-sided platforms, social media, and user-generated video today. And I would add artificial intelligence. So this requires also for cloud resources to move closer to the edge to improve performance. So there is an evolution of the cloud ecosystem towards a more distributed model. But there are really 2 forces. On one hand, there is a dominance of large regions that the hyperscalers are developing. For example, if we look at Africa, the African continent, only South Africa has cloud regions, and now we can say that Kenya has it. The rest of the continent does not have a cloud region. We define a cloud region as an hyperscaler that invests in 3 massive data centers that are interconnected among themselves. So we think that developing countries and emerging economies, they need to develop comprehensive national transformation strategies. So the government can play a big role in stimulating demand. However, the government needs to set the right conditions for the private sector to come in. There is both a role of facilitation for cloud adoption, as well as attracting private investment through the right mix of instruments, and we will see them in a second. The first element that is quite important is reliable and renewable energy. When we think at, for example, artificial intelligence that is driving computational needs at a completely different level, the economics of AI is essentially an economics of energy. So basically, data centers, and in particular, those data centers that are geared towards AI hosting AI machines need to make use of a very intense amount of energy. And by the way, Japan has quite a lot of strength in the technologies around the energy supply for data centers. I think it's a point of strength of Japan. Data centers require a continuous and stable electricity supply, which is an issue in most of Africa, in large part, even in countries that have attracted cloud investment like India and Brazil, that high quality electricity supply is not uniformly available. We have calculated that in 2022, the global data center electricity consumption was about 240 to 340 terawatts, or 1.3% of global electricity. And if we consider also the transmission networks as data travel over different locations, they consumed an additional 1.5% of the global electricity in the world. And the change is quite staggering. You can see it below, a plus 340% in the workloads. This growth will continue to increase. In the United States, I saw last week an estimate that data centers will account for about 15% of the overall national load in 2030. So it's an important point. I mean, we can go maybe more in detail on how artificial intelligence will drive that. I can say that in developed economies, artificial intelligence starts becoming a driver. In emerging markets, is very, very low. It's cloud that is leading the demand for workloads in data centers globally. Second enabler that is very important is connectivity. So core data center services can be impacted by the lack of digital connectivity. Fiber to the data center is the connectivity technology that is necessary, that must be put in place in order to ensure highly reliable data center infrastructure. So fiber optics, we see, Europe, Japan, United States have extensive fiber. And in those locations, you can see on the map, maybe you can, when we leave the presentation, you can zoom it. Cities like Johannesburg, Sao Paulo, most of India have also pervasive fiber infrastructure, East Asia, that enable the growth of regions, of hyperscaler regions. Other countries don't have that infrastructure. So the combination of energy and fiber optic, which are really the physical enablers, creates a big divide. And the divide can be, on a global level. So you have United States, China, Japan, Europe, that have a high density of cloud and data infrastructure. And you have a few developing countries, I would quote the same, India, South Africa, Brazil, that start having Indonesia, start having Malaysia as well, start having an important scale. And then the rest are really lagging behind. Usually we measure the dimension of data center infrastructure by the amount of energy. It's another way to basically look at the importance of energy. South Africa has more terawatt, is about 50% of Africa's capacity for data centers. And then you have Kenya and Nigeria that have about 15, 20%. And then the rest of Africa is very, very low. So you have a big divide. I would say that if we measure the digital divide by mobile phones and fiber, it presents a certain picture where emerging economies are catching up. If we do the same map for cloud and data infrastructure, you see a huge delay, a huge gap between the centers that have an hyperscaler region and countries that are underperforming in this area. So maybe here I go back to Natalia on the key enablers for cloud and data infrastructure, and then I'll come in at the end again.
Thank you very much, Carlo. So, so of course, energy and broadband one of the really key enablers in terms of go, not to go for private investment decision making. But we increasingly see from our conversations with the private sector, from the cloud and data center investors, that other enablers are no less important, especially in the least and middle income countries, where, for instance, such aspects as political stability gains, increased prominence and importance. Time to market with all the permits for these major investments that data centers are, which require construction and development. That is also very important. The qualified workforce, is essential for data centers. And one of the divides that we have observed very clearly is acute divide in skills when it comes to data and cloud infrastructure. The cloud experts is difficult to find in low-income country settings. Therefore, how are you going to maintain such infrastructure? And more importantly, once the investment is done in the country, the investor expects that this infrastructure obviously will be used, but how it will be used if firms and government entities don't have enough of staff who could know really well how to adopt and to use the cloud services, infrastructure and resources in the country. So that is also becoming an important divide. Space availability, and we are talking about availability of commercial land, that need to be found, prepared. Not every land is suitable for this major development. It is an issue in some countries. For instance, it's more issue in developed countries actually than in the developing ones, right? Many countries that we know, like Germany, Ireland, Singapore, for some time had a moratorium in some areas for new data center development because of the concerns of the local populations. This major infrastructure build outs drive the costs of commercial land high. There are environmental concerns around these deployments related to, in some cases, even water shortages, pressure on electricity grid, as Carlo has mentioned. So, not to mention that it's better to have a forest behind than the building of the data centers, So local communities, they are becoming increasingly concerned in some areas. And, the space availability becomes an issue, and geographical size of the country starts to become an advantage again in this context, because that infrastructure will have to be developed. There is just no way that we as a society will move ahead without it, So it's just the reality. Taxes is an important consideration, which allows countries to get the economic competitive advantage one ahead of the other while attracting such investments. And we see many countries introducing such tax breaks. In the early 2000s, for instance, Ireland did a great job on that. We see now Middle East countries introducing such tax breaks. So the countries are fighting in attracting these investments. So these are the main, areas for key enablers that we would like to mention. In our publication, we have a little bit more of them. For instance, the vulnerability to climate change, also important enabler. Proximity to the airports is important enabler. So if you would scroll through the publication, you would see a nice spider picture that is showing how many factors are affecting such investments. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we were having conversation with many cloud and data center providers and associations, we have understood one thing, that while you can expand the electricity grid, you can build a subsea cable which you are missing, or develop other ways the broadband infrastructure. When it comes to regulation and to laws, here the government has a very important role to play, and this role can't really be much substituted, right? So laws and regulations present a major major consideration for the investment, and it's a major enabler for development of cloud and data infrastructure market, because those regulations, they determine whether the data can freely flow within the digital economy of the country and cross-border, which is no less important, whether the actual sharing of data can occur and on which conditions. So that is absolutely essential, not just for data and cloud infrastructure market development, but for development of the entire digital economy. We have looked really closely to this area, and our joint team of the legal departments from the IFC and from the World Bank also has commissioned the special background paper on this topic, and this background paper formed the chapter of the report dedicated to this topic. The major conclusion of our lawyers, was that there is no universal solution to regulatory framework, because every country starts from the different point. Not all the countries developed evenly, and all the countries have different contexts and priorities, because in this context, in the development of cloud and data infrastructure markets, where data is a strategic asset, there are more considerations than just economical that are in play. And the regulations that you put in place determined in major way how the data flow is moving. So one of the key conclusions of our legal teams was that, with so many laws already in place, it's important to make sure that governments don't move ahead with immediately introducing new laws and regulations, but use existing foundational laws as much as possible. And if feasible, then they move through clarifying the uncertainties through industry guidelines rather than through additional regulations. So that was a major foundational principle for consistent development of regulation around cloud and data infrastructure markets. So but when we talk about the areas, legal areas within the legal framework in the country, there are 5 areas that are of concern for data and cloud infrastructure markets, and those areas are data governance. How do you govern the data? Outsourcing regulations and procurement for cloud and data infrastructure services, data protection, no less important, consumer protection and competition, cybersecurity and resiliency is also a very important area, because, we need to maintain, trusted and secure environment for data exchange to ensure the integrity of data. Next slide, please. We couldn't publish or go around about this book without mentioning sustainability, which we believe is policy and business imperative for this type of infrastructure. And Carlo already mentioned that they are a major consumer of the electricity. They're putting enormous pressure on the electricity grid. They're using water for cooling. They are a major source of e-waste. So data centers and data transmission networks cause an estimated 1% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. And cloud computing itself, through those things that I have mentioned, contributes to life cycle emissions as well, right? So when we talk to data center operators, it seems that there is an understanding that they must reassess their cooling strategies and water consumption profiles, as temperatures rise and water scarcity and availability change under climate change and population challenges, right? So it becomes even more an issue as we move forward. Data center operations are energy intensive and compete for limited land, energy, and water resources. One long story short, if you sum up everything, this whole thing constitutes 1.7% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. What also can be said is that for some time, operators of this infrastructure were able to balance without increasing the footprint much, but I think we have reached the limits of the what efficiency can give us. And now with major expansion of this infrastructure, environmental footprint will expand as well. So what I want to say is that it is very important how we build it. And from the gaps that we see, the major expansion in the future will be happening in middle income, in the developing markets, so to say. So it's very important how we build it, and so that government would be in a constant dialogue, about thinking how to do it in a sustainable way. Recommendation from the publication is that pursuit of sustainability requires an approach that combines obligations, incentives, and collaborative effort. There are many examples there and recommendations around that to the client countries. Next slide, please. Writing this publication, we came across many, ironically, data gaps and critical research areas that will need to be taken forward, because we didn't have all the answers. And it was critical that the answers are needed if we want to move this research forward deeper in the major way by the bank. For instance, regional markets, right? I saw there was a question asked by the audience about the regional markets. There is very little such approaches currently, and the regional integration in principle, when you think about that, offers excellent economic opportunities, right? And there is no clear path how this exactly could be done. There are some emerging examples, but this needs to be looked more closely when we are thinking about small, landlocked, and low-income countries. So these examples are not there yet because there is no clear economic benefit. And this is where the World Bank and IFC can play a clear way. So we think that is a major research gap currently. And looking at how this could be done, by private and public sector together is a very important area. The other very important area for future research is economic impact analysis, which is deeper, that should show really the economic value of developing this infrastructure, job creation, productivity growth, long-term economic benefits, all of this. We have commissioned the paper about that for this publication as well with major academic institutions. Actually, Carlo was in charge of this work. And, apparently, you remember in the beginning, I showed how we just analyze 1% of all the data. When it comes to economic impact analysis, it is the same. Many of the data we don't even capture. Comparison between countries in terms of data in this area is very scarce. The low-income countries don't have this data at all. So we still, there is the gap, the gap in the body of knowledge is huge in this area. There are some case studies, mostly from the cloud providers, but major economic research is still to come. And I think that the bank should focus on that so that we can have a conversation with our client countries about why they should develop that infrastructure more broadly. And of course, a standardization of industry metrics, right? Definition of cloud and data infrastructure market elements is not uniform. Not everybody in the same way collects at all, statistics about cloud and data infrastructure markets, right? Methodologies are not there for collection of this sort of data systematically. And of course, there is a lack of, all this translates into the lack of reliable data for policy decisions and market observation. So I would say those three are the major, takeaways that needs to be taken forward by the other following analytical work by the bank, and many of that would be also joined between the IFC and the World Bank, because this is where we can actually collaborate and amplify each other. Next slide. So with that, myself and Carlo want to thank you very, very much for your attention. And now, if you have any questions, we would be very pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia and Carlo, for presenting the report, Advancing Cloud and Data Infrastructure Market. Very interesting. We received some questions from the audience in advance. Let me read those questions, asking both of you to respond. First two questions came from Sasaki-san. Thank you very much for sending questions as usual. So let me read the first question. How do you inform the findings and recommendations of the report analysis to the leaders of the developing countries? Are you going to organize forums, workshops, or trainings for them, perhaps to share the experience and knowledge effectively? Any response on this point? Thank you.
Maybe I start on my side. So indeed, this is very important. I mean, this report has been written having policymakers and investors also in emerging markets in mind. So we don't want this report that took so much time to stay on the shelves. So we would like it to be shared and disseminated. We have started with a translation in French, and we have disseminated it in North Africa through a local outfit that gears towards the industry in that region. But I think we should be more systematic, as your colleague is indicating, and maybe it would be interesting and appropriate to think about one workshop per region. So think about Latin America, one for East Asia, one for South Asia, and one or two for Africa. I think that would be a very good idea. So we'll use every tool to disseminate, and then I think the World Bank is using these results in their policy dialogue to make sure that the policy environment is there, and the IFC has used already the analytics of this report and the background papers to make some investment decisions.
Thank you, Carlo, and thank you for the question. From my side, would like to add that this publication, the bank has the plan to disseminate it during such global events such as GSMA major conference, which is happening every February in Barcelona. And now on the annual or biannual basis, the World Bank will start having the major digital transformation conference. We had the first one this calendar year in Washington, D.C. And now with, if you know, the structure of the bank has changed since July 1st. And in the bank, we're starting to have a digital transformation vice presidency, that will also start having its own more visibility, and that publication, and of course, very important in the portfolio, in the business portfolio of the vice presidency. So I believe that there will be more opportunities to disseminate through some global events that will be organized in the future. But yes, very important. Cannot agree more with Carlo. By the way, we translated, I think, into 6 or 7 languages. Executive summary, there is a dedicated website that we are preparing. So we are also responding to the request of Koichi, the units that you represent, but also from country directors and regions within the bank. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The second question from the Sasaki-san, thank you for your questions. How does the World Bank Group help the developing countries in its lending operations to the developing country government or the private sector in developing countries to cloud and data infrastructure building? Would you please mention some examples of the project, if any? So any responses on this point? Thank you.
Maybe I can start with that question. So, you know, even the need for this publication was necessitated by the increasing demand from the governments to actually make some investments in the infrastructure. And the requests that we were receiving from the government were, can you help us buy new servers for our data center? You know, so they were looking in a very simple way in, you know, what they want to finance through the bank loans. But this publication had helped, you know, to explain that there is more that needs to be done in the countries than just refurbishing one data center. We should speak about how we can create data and cloud infrastructure market. There is a lot of services that can be provided by the private sector, how we bring this in. For instance, we have a project on mini data centers development in Argentina, edge data centers development in Argentina. We have a project in bringing investors for cloud infrastructure in one of the sub-regions in India. You know, we are providing a lot of technical assistance in Africa to help them unlock the development of cloud and data infrastructure markets through revisions of the law and legal framework. But I will pass to Carlo now because their portfolio in this regard is also growing.
Indeed, our portfolio is growing, and what was a marginal investment a few years ago has become about 20 to 25% of the portfolio of investments of the IFC on an annual basis. If we look at the last year, the IFC had some very early investments in the data center business, investments that went very well. We had Accelerate in Russia years ago, and then we had, more importantly, Teraco. Teraco is a South African data center, which is major player, and it grew dramatically with the growth of South Africa as a cloud, as a major cloud market. And that investment also enabled us to see the evolution of a cloud market over time. So basically, first is this gradual growth and then this strong acceleration. So our investment also followed the same fate. At the beginning, it was not growing that much, and then we had a strong growth in the operations of that company. More recently, we have invested in Scala data centers, which is an investment that we did with Digital Bridge in Mexico and Brazil. And Scala data center is one of the leaders in sustainability. So basically, when Natalia was mentioning before some indicators of sustainability, for example, the PUE, the power usage efficiency, basically is the use of energy for cloud activities as opposed to the rest of the data center activities. So the PUE of Scala is very close to best practice globally, 1.2, 1.1, 1.2. So basically, we see hyperscalers like Google or Amazon that are very active in this area. They have very good efficiency ratios. And then usually data centers in emerging markets are not as strong, but Scala is a very good example of sustainability. In Africa, we have invested in Liquid Intelligent Technologies, which is a broadband operator, fiber operator that diversified into data centers. Right now, we are looking at opportunities in 2 East Asian markets, but they are not public yet. So hopefully we'll announcement in the next few months.
Thank you very much for your responses. So the third question, the question coming from Kimura-san. Thank you for your question. Let me read the question. Regional approach was mentioned in the slide number 14 for small, landlocked, and low-income countries, and this seems very promising. Do you have specific region in your mind, for example, East Asia, South Asia, or Africa, for your future and next research? So any responses on this point? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. We all agreed, even with the regional infrastructure directors, that should be a very important area of research, especially in Africa, where low income countries are and least developed countries are somehow concentrated. I had a very funny example from my work. I'm now mapped to West Africa, but I was mapped to Europe and Central Asia before. And my countries in Western Balkans, they signed an MOU to develop a regional cloud. No, basically some sort of a data center, but the project stopped when countries understood that the data center cannot be built in every country. So in principle, what the regionality of that investment means is that it will not be located in every country. That means that somebody will have to access it remotely. And, there is still a lot of trust issues between the countries, when you have to locate your data somewhere, access them remotely. There is a lot of sensitivity around that, not only for the government, but for the businesses as well. So we have to work in this direction, to understand how we can strengthen this trust and, take advantage of economic opportunities that this approach offers, more than on the fears. Because in many cases it's on anecdotal, fears, all these, reservations are built, so there is a lot of work to do here.
No, I agree completely with Natalia. And I think on one hand, it's very important to create a regional data market. So basically to eliminate the flow barriers in data exchanges, especially for regions that are not as highly developed or where there is fragmentation between very small states. So creating a regional data market is very important. And that means that when we talk about public cloud, basically the decisions of the investors will lead, basically will determine where the position of data centers are. It's very important that we separate sensitive government data from data that don't have a particular value for the government. And I think that for the sensitive data, countries will always want to have their national cloud and their data centers in their country. And we need to accept that, but at the same time, it's in their interest to create regional data markets. Let's think about Central Asia or Latin America or West Africa. I think it's very important to make sure that the market for data does not have significant entry barriers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your responses. The next question is not a question, it's rather a comment, but a comment from someone named Ferdos Intaj. Thank you very much for sharing your comment. So let me read this comment, but also because of the interest of time, I would, after this comment being read by myself, I would like to invite both of you to make the very final concluding remarks, messages to the audience in Japan. Then we conclude the seminar. So let me read the comment. The United States is far ahead of the other nations in data infrastructure and the cloud management. The data infrastructure growth of East Asia is more than Europe. With more growth requires more energy efficiency and more protection. Even India is still focused on the developing workforce. This huge digital gap can make US as Zeus, some European and Asian and Latin American countries as Poseidon, and the rest of the world as Hades. This imbalance in digital rights is not beneficial for the world in the long term. So this was a comment from the Instash. So since we have a few minutes before the end of the seminar, so I'd like to invite Natalia and Carlo to share your final messages, final remarks, then we will close. So please.
Maybe I'll go first. I think this is a nice comment, and it tells you the perception of disparity between nations, and for sure we see it between high income and middle income countries and low income countries. And if you look at Greek gods, you have the wife of Zeus is Hera, who in Greek mythology is a good god, is the god of family and love. And then when he moved to Roman mythology, it became Juno and became a warrior and somebody you need to fear. So definitely, we also need to think about this power that major nations have to really create an environment of growth and prosperity and private sector led growth, which eliminates poverty. I think that's very important. There is also a sensation that behind these technologies there can be also projection of power, and I think that's a very, very important element. I would like to conclude also with artificial intelligence, which is moving so fast, and I think it would require very soon an update to the report. Artificial intelligence is affecting the way data centers are built, is affecting the way energy is provided to data centers. And I said these are two areas where Japan has particular strength, and we saw it in some of our projects. But also semiconductors, also the very processing of data and information will change over time. And I think that the investments, and again, Japan has some excellent corporate venture capital that is focusing their efforts in this area, is towards energy efficiency. Can we make large language models more energy efficient? Can we start with neuromorphic computing, which is going into the machines of smartphones right now to achieve efficiency? Apparently, yes. We can have a camera in a phone that produces the data with a 20x more efficient use of resources. So computing will change, semiconductors will change, and this will be the new wave of innovation that will require very soon an update to our report.
Cannot agree more. From my side, would like to note that there is no digital transformation without cloud and data infrastructure. So it will become an integral part of the World Bank operations, and digital transformation. In the bank, in IDA countries, MIGA will see more guarantees issued for these investments, and IFC portfolio we have seen growing. So it's not just about bringing internet to all anymore. It's about more than that, and cloud and data infrastructure is a very important part of this. Regarding the comments that you, Koichi, have mentioned, very important comment, and we are seeing around the world the rise of the competition analysis and market investigations in this regard, seeing how these powers, market powers, can be balanced and can be challenged. There are in France recently, in Netherlands, we measured some of this in the report. So these bigger mechanisms that are in our global economies, they will start to work, and we will find the solutions, as we always do, to this challenge as well, I'm sure. But what we want to achieve through this publication is that the access to affordable, good quality, and big spectrum of services of cloud data infrastructure markets will become available in low and middle income countries, in our client countries. I think this is very important for helping them to move forward. And we were glad with Carlo to be to make some effort within our group to help that cause. And we hope to work on many research in this area. And we also want to thank you very much for inviting us. It was very interesting to present here. Thank you for all the questions.
Thank you very much. We had the pleasure of having Natalia Gervanovska-Galcia, who is the World Bank Senior ICT Policy Specialist from Washington. And also we had the Carlo Maria Rosotto, who is the Principal Investment Officer of the International Finance Corporation, IFC of the World Bank Group, connecting us from Paris. Thank you very much for both of you presenting the very interesting report, Advancing Cloud and Data Infrastructure Market Strategic Directions for Low and Middle Income Countries. We would certainly want to feature your future research once coming out in our seminar programs. Thank you very much. Great. So we are going to organize another seminar next week. This is going to be featuring the report titled Land Policies for Resilient and Equitable Growth in Africa. This is going to be at 8 a.m. On the Friday, July 19th, next week. And also just announced that the Dan Loga, who is the program manager for governance in Development Impact Evaluation Unit in the Development Economics DEC, our research arm of the World Bank. Dan is going to be in Tokyo on the August 7th and 8th. We are going to organize a hybrid seminar at the 12 p.m. on the Thursday, August 8th, featuring Dan. So if you want to join us in person, you are welcome to join. Please check the detailed information on our website. So this is going to be on August 8th, Thursday, 12 p.m. Dan Loga, who is the program manager for governance program at the Development Impact Evaluation Unit, is going to present what the World Bank is doing in Development Impact Evaluation area. So with that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next time. Thank you.